Maya had been living a double life for 2 years now, and honestly, she was getting tired of it. During the day, she was just another face in the marketing department at Hartwell Industries. She'd smile at colleagues in the elevator, grab coffee from the break room, and sit through boring meetings like everyone else. But when the sun went down and the office emptied out, everything changed. That's when she became Alexander's secret. Alexander Hartwell was the kind of man who made people nervous just by walking into a room. He was the CEO, young for his position at 35, and he ran his family's company like a well-oiled machine. Cold, calculated, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. People whispered about him in the hallways, wondering if he even had a heart under those expensive suits. Maya knew he did, though. She'd seen it. Not often, but enough times to keep her hoping for more. Their relationship had started at a company party 2 years ago. Maya had been standing alone on a balcony, escaping the loud music and fake laughter inside. Alexander had stepped out for air and they'd just started talking. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. He'd seemed almost normal that night, asking about her life, actually listening when she spoke. When he'd asked for her number, she'd felt like the luckiest girl in the world. The first few months had been exciting. Secret meetings in his penthouse, late-night drives along the coast, stolen moments that felt special because they were just theirs. He'd told her he valued privacy, that mixing personal and professional life was complicated. She'd understood, or at least she'd told herself she did. But 2 years later, the excitement had worn off and reality had settled in like an unwelcome guest. Alexander never held her hand in public, never took her to company events even when she watched other executives bring their partners, never posted a single photo of them together. She had to leave his penthouse before sunrise every single time, like she was something shameful that needed to be hidden before the world woke up. Her best friend Lisa had stopped being supportive around the 6-month mark. "You deserve better than this," Lisa would say every time Maya canceled plans because Alexander had called. "You're letting him treat you like you're not good enough to be seen with him." "You don't understand," Maya would argue back. "He's under a lot of pressure. His family, the company, the media. It's complicated. It's only complicated because he's making it complicated," Lisa would shoot back. But Maya never listened. She'd convinced herself that what they had was real, even if it was hidden. The way he'd pull her close in the quiet hours of the night and actually talk to her about his fears, his pressures, his dreams. The way he'd remember small details about her life, like how she took her coffee or which paintings she loved. The expensive gifts that showed up at her door with little notes attached. Sure, she wanted more. She wanted to meet his family, to go to dinner without checking if anyone might recognize them, to be introduced as his girlfriend instead of his colleague on the rare occasions they crossed paths in public. But she told herself to be patient. Good things take time, right? Her friends started calling her needy. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was too desperate for his attention, too willing to drop everything when he texted, too forgiving when he canceled plans last minute because of work. But when you love someone, you make sacrifices. That's what she told herself anyway. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. Alexander had called her to his office after everyone else had gone home. That wasn't unusual, but something in his voice had been different. Colder somehow, more distant than normal. She'd walked into his massive office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He'd been standing with his back to her, hands in his pockets, staring out at the lights below. "We need to talk," he'd said without turning around. Those 4 words. Maya's stomach had dropped. Nothing good ever followed those 4 words. "I'm getting engaged," he'd continued, still not looking at her, to Victoria Ashford. "The announcement will be made next week." For a moment, Maya couldn't process the words. They didn't make sense. Engaged to someone else? After 2 years? What? Her voice had come out barely above a whisper. Alexander had finally turned around then, his face completely neutral, like he was discussing a business deal, not destroying someone's heart. "It's been arranged for months. Our families have been planning this merger for years. It makes sense financially and socially." "Merger?" Maya had felt her hand start to shake. "You're talking about marriage like it's a business transaction." "In my world it is." He'd said it so matter-of-factly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Victoria understands how these things work. It's practical." "And us?" Maya had asked, even though she already knew the answer. What was this then? These 2 years. Alexander had walked to his desk, pulled out an envelope. You've been wonderful company, Maya, truly. I'm offering you a generous severance package and a recommendation letter that will open doors anywhere you want to work. Company. That's what she'd been to him. Wonderful company. Something inside Maya had cracked then. Not broken, not shattered, just cracked enough to let reality seep in. She'd spent 2 years being someone's secret. Someone's escape from his real life. Someone who was good enough for the darkness but not for the light. I don't want your money, she'd said quietly. Don't be foolish. Take it, you've earned it. Like she'd been an employee this whole time. Maybe in his mind she had been. Maya had looked at this man she'd loved, really looked at him and realized she'd been in love with someone who didn't actually exist. The real Alexander was standing in front of her right now, treating her like a line item to be closed out. A loose end to be tied up neatly before he moved on to his next chapter. Did you ever actually care about me? She'd asked, hating how small her voice sounded. He'd hesitated for just a second. I'm not built for that kind of thing, Maya. I thought you understood that. She hadn't understood it. She just hoped things would change. That's what needy girls do, right? They hope and wait and give and hope some more, even when all the signs are screaming at them to walk away. Maya had picked up the envelope from his desk, not because she wanted his money, but because her hands needed something to hold on to. Congratulations on your engagement, she'd said, surprised by how steady her voice suddenly was. She'd turned and walked out of his office, out of the building, out of his life. She didn't cry in front of him, didn't beg or scream or ask him to reconsider. She just left. That night, Maya had gone to his penthouse one last time while he was still at the office. She'd packed up the few personal things she'd left there over 2 years. A toothbrush, some clothes, a book she'd been reading. She'd looked around at the place that had felt like a second home, knowing she'd never see it again. On the kitchen counter, she'd left the envelope with his money inside. On top of it, she'd placed her key to his penthouse. No note, no explanation. She didn't owe him words. He'd said everything that needed to be said. As Maya had closed that door for the last time, she'd made herself a promise. She was done being someone's secret, done being needy, done waiting, done hoping for crumbs of affection from someone who saw her as temporary. She had no idea that walking away from Alexander Hartwell was just the beginning of a story that would turn both their lives completely upside down. 3 months had passed since Maya walked out of Alexander's life, and he should have been fine. He'd gotten exactly what he wanted, right? A perfect society wedding to Victoria Ashford, headlines in every major newspaper. 2 powerful families joining forces, everything neat and organized just the way he liked it. So why did everything feel so wrong? The wedding had been exactly what everyone expected. Expensive, elegant, and completely emotionless. Victoria had looked stunning in her designer gown, and Alexander had said his vows with the same tone he used to close business deals. Their guests had called it the wedding of the year. Nobody seemed to notice that the bride and groom barely looked at each other. Victoria wasn't a bad person. She was smart, sophisticated, and understood exactly what their marriage was about. Money, power, social status. She didn't expect love, and she didn't offer it either. Most evenings, she'd disappear into her wing of their new mansion to plan charity galas or redecorate rooms. While Alexander buried himself in work, it was a perfect arrangement. Convenient, practical, everything Alexander had always claimed to value. But late at night, when the house was quiet and he was alone in his study, he'd find himself staring at his phone, waiting for texts that would never come. Sometimes he'd start typing Maya's name, then delete it. What would he even say? He'd made his choice. She'd made hers by leaving. Work had always been Alexander's escape, but even that wasn't working anymore. He'd zone out during meetings, his mind drifting to memories he thought he'd filed away. The way Maya laughed at his terrible jokes. How she'd curl up on his couch with a book, completely content just being near him. The spark in her eyes when she talked about art or music or any of the 1,000 little things that made her happy. His assistant had to repeat questions twice now. His business partners noticed his distraction. Alexander Hartwell, the man famous for his laser focus, was falling apart. You've seemed off lately, Victoria mentioned one morning over breakfast, barely looking up from her phone. Everything all right with the company? Fine, Alexander had replied automatically. Just tired? She'd nodded, already losing interest. That was their marriage in a nutshell. Polite questions, surface-level answers, Two people sharing a house but not a life. Then his mother got sick and everything shifted. Catherine Hartwell had always been the heart of their family. Even after building a business empire, she'd managed to keep some warmth in their cold corporate world. When she collapsed at a family dinner, Alexander felt genuine fear for the first time in years. The doctor said it was serious. Cancer, aggressive, caught too late. They gave her months, maybe a year if she was lucky. Alexander had moved back into the family estate to be closer to her. Victoria didn't object. She seemed almost relieved to have the mansion to herself. His mother drifted in and out of consciousness those first few weeks. But whenever she was awake, she kept asking about someone. At first, Alexander couldn't make out the name through her weak voice. "That girl," his mother would whisper. "The lovely girl you brought here. Where is she?" Alexander's sister Olivia had been there when their mother first started asking. She'd given him a strange look, one he couldn't quite read. "She's talking about Maya," Olivia had said quietly. "Mom's been asking about her for months, even before she got sick." Alexander had frozen. "That was 2 years ago. Mom met her once for one afternoon." "I know, but she kept bringing her up. Said Maya reminded her of someone." Olivia had paused, choosing her words carefully. "Alex, there's something you need to know. Before Mom got really sick, she hired a private investigator." "She what? Why?" Olivia had handed him a thick envelope. "She wanted to find Maya. She was trying to track her down. I found this in her study." Alexander had opened the envelope with shaking hands, expecting maybe background information, phone numbers, addresses. What he found instead made his blood run cold. DNA test results. Hospital records from 28 years ago. Adoption papers with official seals. Birth certificates, and photographs, old and faded, of a tiny baby girl in a hospital nursery. He'd read through the documents 3 times, certain he was misunderstanding. But the facts were clear, laid out in black and white with official stamps and signatures. Maya Chen wasn't just his former girlfriend. She was his sister. His biological sister, born when his parents were just teenagers themselves, given up for adoption before his father's business success, before the Hartwell name meant anything. The room had started spinning. Alexander had gripped the edge of his mother's desk, trying to process information his brain refused to accept. "I don't understand," he'd whispered. "How is this possible?" Olivia had tears in her eyes. Mom and Dad had a baby when they were 16 and 17. Both sets of grandparents forced them to give her up for adoption. Mom's been looking for her daughter for years. When you brought Maya to the house that day, Mom recognized certain features. The eyes, the way she smiled. She wasn't completely sure, so she hired an investigator to be certain. And she didn't tell me? She didn't say anything? She was going to. But then she saw how you two were together, and she got scared. She told me she didn't know how to tell you without destroying you both. Olivia had touched his arm gently. "Alex, she didn't know you were involved with Maya like that. Not until it was too late." Every memory Alexander had of Maya suddenly twisted into something horrifying. Every kiss, every intimate moment, every whispered word in the dark. He'd been with his own sister, his own flesh and blood. He'd made it to the bathroom just in time before getting sick. For days afterward, Alexander existed in a fog of shock and guilt. He couldn't look at his mother without feeling a complicated mix of anger and sympathy. She'd known for months and said nothing. But what could she have said? How do you tell your son that the woman he's been with is actually his sister? His father, Robert, had been the one to finally explain everything. They'd sat in the study, and Robert had told him the whole story. How young and scared they'd been. How their parents had threatened to cut them off completely if they kept the baby. How Catherine had cried for years, wondering where her daughter was, if she was safe, if she was loved. "We were cowards," Robert had said, his voice thick with regret. "We should have fought harder. We should have found her sooner. This is our fault, not yours. You didn't know." But not knowing didn't make Alexander feel any better. He'd treated Maya like she was disposable, like she was just convenient company. He'd hidden her away like a shameful secret. And all along, she'd been his sister. Family. Someone he should have protected and cherished, not used and discarded. The worst part was he couldn't even apologize. Couldn't explain. Couldn't make it right because Maya had disappeared. Alexander had tried everything. He'd called her old number, disconnected. Visited her apartment, new tenants. Checked her job, she'd quit the day after their last conversation. Her social media accounts, all deleted. He'd sent messages through mutual friends, but they'd either ignored him or told him to leave her alone. Maya had erased herself from his world completely, and he couldn't blame her. Why would she want anything to do with the man who'd treated her so badly? But he had to find her. Had to tell her the truth, no matter how devastating. She deserved to know she had a family, even if that family had failed her in every possible way. His mother's condition got worse. In her lucid moments, she'd cry for her daughter, begging to see her one more time before she died. The guilt was eating Catherine alive, just like the cancer. Victoria had served him with divorce papers in the middle of all this. "I'm not stupid, Alexander," she'd said calmly. "You're obsessed with finding some girl from your past. Whatever this is about, it's clear our arrangement isn't working for you. Let's end this cleanly." He'd signed without argument. Their marriage had been a mistake from the start. Alexander had hired the best private investigators money could buy, but Maya had covered her tracks well. Weeks passed with no leads. His mother was fading fast. The company was suffering from his absence. His entire life was unraveling. Then finally a break. One of Maya's old co-workers mentioned she'd talked about wanting to return to her hometown someday. Some small coastal village where she'd spent summers with her grandmother. Alexander didn't hesitate. He got in his car and drove 7 hours north, following a desperate hope and a vague description of a place Maya had mentioned once in passing. The coastal town was small, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. He'd asked around, shown Maya's picture. Finally, someone pointed him toward a small art gallery near the beach. His hands had been shaking when he'd pushed open the gallery door. And there she was, Maya standing behind the counter, paint on her fingers, looking more peaceful than he'd ever seen her, until she looked up and saw him. The peace vanished from her face instantly, replaced by something cold and hard. "Get out," she'd said quietly. "Maya, please, I need to talk to you. There's nothing you could possibly say that I want to hear. It's about my mother, about your—" He'd struggled with the words. "About the truth. About who you really are." She'd laughed then, bitter and sharp. "I know who I am, Alexander. I'm the girl who wasn't good enough for you. The one you kept hidden like something shameful. I finally figured that out. Now leave. You don't understand. We can't— what we had—" The words stuck in his throat. How do you say something so impossible? "Maya, you're my sister." Maya stared at Alexander like he'd lost his mind. Sister? Was this some kind of sick joke? Some twisted excuse he'd come up with to make himself feel better about how he'd treated her? "That's not funny," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "If this is your way of apologizing or whatever you're trying to do, it's disgusting. Just leave. I'm not joking." Alexander pulled out a folder from his bag, his hands trembling. "I wish I was. God, I wish this was a joke." He spread papers across her gallery counter, official documents with government seals, hospital records, photographs. Maya's eyes scanned them, not really understanding what she was looking at. "Birth certificates, adoption papers, DNA test results. What is this?" she whispered. "My mother, Catherine Hartwell, had a baby when she was 16, a daughter. Her parents and my father's parents forced them to give the baby up for adoption. That baby was you, Maya. You're that daughter." Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is insane." "You're making this up. You had these documents forged or something because you feel guilty about what you did. Look at the dates. Look at the hospital. Look at the DNA results." Alexander's voice cracked. "My mother recognized you when I brought you to the estate that day 2 years ago. She saw something familiar in you, in your eyes, your smile. She hired an investigator to be sure, and everything checked out. You're a Hartwell, Maya. You're my biological sister." The gallery started spinning. Maya gripped the counter to steady herself. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be true. But the documents looked official, the seals looked real, and Alexander looked like he was about to fall apart. "No," she said, shaking her head. No. This can't be happening. I didn't know. You have to believe me. I had no idea until a few weeks ago when my sister Olivia found these papers in Moines. Mother's study. Mom got sick and she kept asking for you, and that's when everything came out. Every memory of their relationship flashed through Maya's mind. Every kiss, every touch, every intimate moment they'd shared over 2 years. Her stomach turned. She felt like she was going to be sick. "We were together," she whispered, her face going pale. "We were together for 2 years. How could this happen? How could the universe be this cruel?" Alexander looked away, shame written all over his face. I've been asking myself the same thing. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Every memory makes me feel sick. But neither of us knew, Maya. We didn't know. Not knowing doesn't make it okay. Her voice rose, months of pain and confusion finally breaking through. I loved you. I gave you everything. And now you're telling me it was all wrong? That every moment we shared was some horrible mistake? I know. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Tears were streaming down Alexander's face now, and Maya had never seen him cry before. Not just for this, but for how I treated you. You were my sister, my family, and I treated you like you were disposable, like you were something to be ashamed of. Even if we hadn't been related, you deserved so much better than what I gave you. Maya sank into a chair, her legs no longer able to hold her. She stared at the documents spread across her counter, trying to make sense of a world that had just turned completely upside down. Your mother, she said finally. Our mother, she knew? Alexander nodded. She figured it out months ago, but she didn't know how to tell us. She didn't know how to explain without destroying us both. She was trying to find the right time, the right words. Then she got sick and everything happened too fast. She gave me away. Maya's voice was hollow. She had me and then just gave me away. She was 16, Maya, just a kid herself. Both sets of grandparents threatened to disown them completely if they kept you. They were scared and didn't have any support. My father told me they've regretted it every single day since. Maya wiped tears from her face, not even realizing she'd started crying. I had a good life. My adoptive parents loved me. My grandmother was wonderful. I wasn't missing anything. But even as she said it, she wondered if that was true. Had there always been a small empty space inside her, wondering about where she came from? They sat in silence for a long time. The sun was setting outside, casting orange light through the gallery windows. Other people were walking by on the street, living normal lives, dealing with normal problems. Maya envied them. She's dying, isn't she? Maya asked quietly. Your mother. Our mother? That's why you're really here, Alexander nodded. The doctors say she has weeks, maybe a month. She keeps asking for you. She wants to meet you, to explain, to apologize. She wants to know her daughter before she dies. And you? Why are you really here, Alexander? To ease your guilt? To make yourself feel better about what we did? I'm here because you deserve to know the truth. Because you have a family whether you want us or not. Because my mother is dying with the guilt of giving you up, and she deserves a chance to say goodbye to her daughter. He paused. And yes, maybe part of me needs to know you'll be okay, that this won't destroy you. Maya looked at this man who'd been her lover, who was now her brother, and felt something complicated and painful twist in her chest. She'd loved him once. Part of her probably still did, even though that love had nowhere to go now. It had to be buried, transformed into something else, something that could exist in this new reality. I don't know if I can face her, Maya admitted. I don't know if I can walk into that house and meet the woman who gave birth to me, knowing what I know, knowing what we did. She doesn't blame you. Neither of us blame you. This isn't your fault. It's not yours either, Maya said, even though part of her still wanted to be angry at him. We didn't know. We couldn't have known. But I still treated you terribly. Even without knowing you were my sister, I should have treated you better. I should have been honest about what I wanted instead of stringing you along for 2 years. I used you, Maya. I was ashamed to be seen with you, and that was wrong regardless of who you turned out to be. Maya appreciated the apology, even if it couldn't fix anything. Why were you ashamed? She asked. I never understood that. Was I really that embarrassing to you? It wasn't about you. It was about me. I was so caught up in maintaining this perfect image, this controlled life where everything had its place. You made me feel things I didn't know how to handle, so I kept you separate from everything else. I was a coward. You were, Maya agreed, and I was an idiot for staying. You weren't an idiot. You were hopeful. That's not the same thing. They sat together as the sky darkened outside. Two people trying to figure out how to move forward when the past had become impossible to carry. If I come see her, Maya said slowly, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for her. For the woman who carried me for 9 months and then had to give me away. That couldn't have been easy even if she was young. I understand. And after that, I don't know what happens with us. I don't know if we can have any kind of relationship. This is too big, Alexander. It's too much. I know. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. Maya looked at the document still spread across her counter, proof of a family she never knew existed. Proof that her life was built on secrets and coincidences that seemed too impossible to be real. When? She asked. Whenever you're ready. Tomorrow, next week, whenever you can. Maya took a deep breath. Tomorrow. Let's do it tomorrow. If I wait too long, I'll talk myself out of it. Alexander nodded, standing up to leave. At the door, he turned back. Maya, thank you. For listening. For not throwing me out. For being stronger than I ever was. After he left, Maya locked the gallery door and sat in the darkness, surrounded by the paintings she'd created over the past 3 months. They were all seascapes, all blues and greens and whites. Peaceful scenes that were nothing like the storm raging inside her. She'd come to this town to escape, to start over, to forget about Alexander Hartwell and the 2 years she'd wasted on him. Instead, she'd discovered she could never truly escape him. He was literally part of her family now, connected to her by blood in ways that could never be undone. Maya pulled out her phone and called her adoptive mother. She needed to hear a familiar voice, needed to remember that she was loved, that she had a family who chose her even if her biological family hadn't been able to keep her. Mom, she said when the phone picked up, I need to tell you something. It's going to sound crazy, but I need you to just listen. And in the darkness of her gallery, surrounded by paintings of calm seas, Maya began to tell the story of how her life had just gotten impossibly complicated. The drive to the Hartwell estate felt longer than it actually was. Maya sat in the passenger seat of Alexander's car, watching the landscape change from coastal beauty to sprawling mansions. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, so she kept them clasped tightly in her lap. Alexander didn't try to make small talk, and she was grateful for that. What do you even say in a situation like this? The silence was heavy, but somehow better than forced conversation. When they pulled up to the estate, Maya's breath caught. She'd been here once before, 2 years ago, but she'd been too nervous about meeting Alexander's family to really take it in. Now, knowing this was supposed to be her family too, the massive house looked different, less intimidating, more sad somehow. Like a beautiful cage that had trapped everyone inside it. You okay? Alexander asked softly as he turned off the engine. No, Maya answered honestly. But I don't think I'll ever be fully okay with this, so we might as well go in. Olivia met them at the door. Alexander's sister, Maya reminded herself. Her sister too, apparently. Olivia's eyes were red from crying, but she smiled when she saw Maya. Thank you for coming, Olivia said, and then did something unexpected. She hugged Maya tight like they were old friends reuniting. I'm so sorry. For all of this, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Maya stood stiff in the embrace at first, then slowly relaxed. Olivia's hug felt genuine, warm. It's not your fault, Maya managed to say. Mom's upstairs. She's having a good day today, very alert. She knows you're coming. She's been asking about you all morning. Olivia pulled back, her hands still on Maya's shoulders. She's scared you'll hate her. I don't hate her, Maya said, surprised to realize it was true. I don't know what I feel, but it's not hate. The walk upstairs felt like climbing a mountain. Each step took effort. Alexander walked beside her, close enough to catch her if she fell, but not touching her. That distance between them felt symbolic somehow. They'd been as close as two people could be, and now they had to learn to exist in completely different spaces. Catherine Hartwell's room was bright, full of flowers and sunlight. She was sitting up in bed looking small and fragile in a way that made Maya's chest tighten. She'd expected to see the elegant woman from 2 years ago, but cancer had stolen that away. Catherine looked tired, worn down, but her eyes lit up the moment Maya walked through the door. Oh, Catherine breathed out, tears immediately streaming down her face. Oh, my baby girl. You came. Maya stood frozen in the doorway. This woman, this dying woman, was her mother. Had carried her, given birth to her, then had to give her away. The weight of that suddenly felt enormous. Hi, Maya said awkwardly, not knowing what else to say. Come sit, please. Catherine patted the bed beside her with a trembling hand. Let me look at you. Maya walked slowly to the bed and sat down carefully, afraid of hurting this fragile woman. Up close, she could see features that matched her own. The same eye shape, the same curve of the lips, similar bone structure. How had she not noticed this before? You look so much like I did at your age, Catherine said, reaching out to touch Maya's face gently. I've dreamed of this moment for 28 years. I never thought it would actually happen. Why didn't you look for me sooner? Maya asked, not accusingly, just genuinely curious. Catherine's face crumpled. Fear, mostly. I was afraid you'd hate me for giving you up. Afraid you wouldn't want to know me. Afraid I'd ruin your life by showing up out of nowhere." She paused, catching her breath. "The adoption was closed. Your parents wanted it that way, and I understood. But I hired investigators over the years just to make sure you were safe, that you were happy. When I finally worked up the courage to actually reach out, I'd already gotten sick." "My adoptive parents were good people," Maya said. "They loved me. I had a happy childhood. I'm so glad." Catherine squeezed Maya's hand. "That's all I ever wanted. For you to be loved and safe, even if it couldn't be with me." Alexander and Olivia had quietly left the room at some point, giving them privacy. Maya was alone with her biological mother for the first time in 28 years. "I need to explain," Catherine said, "about why I gave you up. You deserve to know the whole story." So Catherine told her everything. How she and Robert had been high school sweethearts, too young and reckless. How the pregnancy had terrified them both. How their parents had been furious, ashamed, demanding they give the baby up or lose everything. How they'd both cried when the nurses took the baby away. How Catherine had begged to hold her daughter just once but was told it would make it harder. "I was weak," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "I should have fought harder. Should have run away with you, figured it out somehow. But I was 16 and scared, and I let them bully me into doing what they wanted." "You were a child yourself," Maya said quietly. "I can't imagine being 16 and pregnant and having everyone pressure you like that. Robert and I got married young, as soon as we were 18. We tried for years to have another baby, hoping it would fill the hole you left. Finally, we had Olivia, and then Alexander a few years later. I loved them both so much, but there was always this empty space. Always wondering where you were, if you were okay, if you ever thought about us." Maya felt tears running down her own face now. "I used to wonder sometimes about my biological parents, who they were, why they gave me up. I'd make up stories in my head when I was little." "What kind of stories?" "Good ones, mostly. That you were young and scared, but that you loved me. That giving me up was the hardest thing you ever did." Maya laughed sadly. "Turns out I was right." Catherine pulled Maya into a hug, and this time Maya hugged back. They sat like that for a long time, two people trying to bridge 28 years of separation with a single embrace. "I'm so sorry," Catherine whispered. "I'm so sorry about everything. About giving you up, about not finding you sooner, about what happened between you and Alexander. If I'd just been brave enough to tell you both as soon as I suspected, none of that would have happened." "We didn't know," Maya said. "None of us knew. That's not your fault. But Alexander treated you so badly even before anyone knew. He kept you hidden like you were something shameful. That's my fault too. I raised him in this cold world where image and status matter more than people. I taught him to be that way." Maya pulled back to look at Catherine. "He's trying to do better now. He knows he messed up. Do you think you can ever forgive him? Forgive any of us?" Maya thought about it carefully. "I don't know yet. This is all too big, too complicated. But I don't hate you. I don't hate any of you. I'm just trying to figure out how to move forward." They talked for hours. Catherine told Maya stories about her childhood, about Robert, about the family history. Maya shared stories about her adoptive family, her grandmother, her life. They looked at old photo albums together, and Catherine pointed out relatives Maya looked like, features she'd inherited. Robert came in eventually, nervous and tearful. He apologized too, explained his side of the story, how he'd been just as scared and weak as Catherine. Maya could see where Alexander got his height, his build, his serious expression. This was her biological father, even if he'd never had the chance to raise her. Olivia brought lunch and stayed to eat with them. She was warm and welcoming, treating Maya like the sister she'd always been, not like a stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere. "I always wanted a sister," Olivia said with a sad smile. "I just wish we'd found each other under different circumstances." "Me too," Maya admitted. Alexander checked in a few times but mostly stayed away, giving Maya space to get to know everyone without the awkwardness of their past hanging over everything. When their eyes met across the room, there was so much unspoken pain there. They'd have to figure out how to be siblings eventually, but that could wait. As the sun started to set, Catherine grew tired. The day had taken a lot out of her. "Will you come back?" Catherine asked, holding Maya's hand. "Please? I don't have much time left and I want to know my daughter. Really know her." Maya felt something shift inside her chest. These people had hurt her, failed her, made terrible mistakes. But they were also her family, her blood. And Catherine was dying, wanting nothing more than a chance to know the daughter she'd given up. "I'll come back," Maya promised. "As often as I can." Catherine smiled, the first real smile Maya had seen from her. "Thank you. Thank you for giving us this chance." On the drive back to the coast, Maya stared out the window and tried to process everything. She had a family now. A complicated, messy, broken family, but a family nonetheless. She had a dying mother who wanted to know her, a father who regretted his choices, a sister who welcomed her with open arms. And she had Alexander, her former lover, her current brother, her permanent complication. "Thank you for today," Alexander said quietly. "I know how hard that must have been." "It was hard," Maya agreed. "But also kinda good. I don't know. It's complicated." "Everything about this is complicated," Maya looked over at him. "We're going to have to figure out how to be siblings, you know. How to exist in each other's lives without it being weird." "I know. I don't know how we do that, but I want to try, if you'll let me." "I guess we'll figure it out together," Maya said. "We don't really have another choice." Maya kept her promise. She drove to the Hartwell estate 3 times a week for the next 2 months, spending hours with Catherine. They talked about everything and nothing. Catherine shared stories about Maya's grandparents, about family traditions, about silly things like her favorite foods and childhood pets. Maya told her about art school, about her dreams, about the life she'd built for herself. Some days were harder than others. There were moments when Catherine would fade, when the pain medication made her confused and she'd forget Maya had already arrived. There were days when the reality of what had happened between Maya and Alexander would hit them both, and they'd sit in uncomfortable silence, not knowing how to move past it. But there were good days too. Days when Catherine laughed at Maya's stories. Days when they'd look through old photo albums and Catherine would point out all the ways Maya resembled various relatives. Days when it almost felt normal, like they were just a mother and daughter making up for lost time. Alexander was there too, though he and Maya moved around each other carefully, like dancers who'd forgotten the steps. They were polite, distant, working hard to build something new from the ruins of what they'd been. It wasn't comfortable yet, but it was something. "How's the gallery doing?" he'd ask. "Good. I sold 3 paintings last week." "That's great. You're talented." "Thanks." Conversations like that, surface level and safe, but it was a start. Olivia became the bridge between them. She had this way of making everything feel less heavy, less impossible. She'd drag Maya shopping, invite her to family dinners, text her funny memes. She treated Maya like they'd been sisters forever, and slowly Maya started to feel like maybe they actually were. Victoria's divorce from Alexander was finalized quietly. She'd apparently moved to Paris and seemed much happier there, according to the society pages. Alexander had stepped down from his CEO position, handing the company over to someone else so he could spend more time with his mother. The business world had been shocked, but Alexander didn't seem to care about any of that anymore. "I spent so many years focused on the wrong things," he told Maya one afternoon while they sat in Catherine's room watching her sleep. Work status image. "None of it matters when you're sitting here watching someone you love die." "No," Maya agreed quietly. "It doesn't. I'm sorry again. For how I treated you. For making you feel like you weren't good enough when the truth is I was never good enough for you." Maya looked at him, really looked at him. He'd changed over these months. The cold businessman had been replaced by someone more real, more broken, more human. "I forgive you," she said, and meant it. "We both made mistakes. We both got hurt. But we're trying to do better now, and that's what counts." 3 months after that first visit, Catherine passed away peacefully in her sleep. Maya was there, holding one hand while Robert held the other. Alexander and Olivia stood at the foot of the bed. They'd all known it was coming, but it still hurt like a physical wound. The funeral was huge. Hundreds of people came to pay respects to Catherine Hartwell, the matriarch of one of the city's most prominent families. But Maya stood with her family, her real family, and for the first time in her life she felt like she belonged somewhere beyond just herself. Catherine's will surprised everyone. She'd left half of the family estate to Maya, along with a letter that Maya read through tears in the lawyer's office. "My dearest Maya," the letter began, "if you're reading this, then I've passed on and I hope I got to know you even a little bit before I left. I'm leaving you half of everything because you should have always had it. You're my daughter, and you deserve to grow up with all the advantages your siblings had. I can't give you back those years, but I can give you this. Use it to build the life you've always dreamed of. Follow your art, be happy. And please, if you can find it in your heart, don't abandon your siblings. They need you more than you know. I love you. I've always loved you. Even when I couldn't be with you, you were always in my heart. Mom, Maya had cried so hard she couldn't breathe. Olivia had held her, and even Alexander had put a hand on her shoulder, the first time he'd touched her since that day in her gallery when everything changed. The money was more than Maya could process, more than she'd ever need. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about being claimed, being acknowledged, being told that she mattered, that she'd always mattered. She didn't move back to the city, though. Her coastal town had become home, and she liked the peace it offered. But she expanded her gallery, turned it into something bigger and better. She started teaching art classes to kids who couldn't afford fancy lessons. She donated to causes she cared about. She used what Catherine had given her to build something meaningful, and she stayed connected to her family. Real, actual connection now, not the hidden, shameful thing it had been with Alexander before. Olivia visited often, sometimes staying for whole weekends. They'd paint together, walk on the beach, talk about everything. Having a sister was strange and wonderful, and Maya found herself grateful for it in ways she hadn't expected. Robert came too, less frequently but always welcome. He was trying in his awkward way to be the father he'd never gotten the chance to be. He couldn't fix the past, but he could show up for the present, and that meant something. Alexander was the hardest. The history between them made everything complicated. But slowly, painfully, they figured out how to be siblings. They went to therapy, both separately and together sometimes, working through the guilt and shame and confusion. It wasn't easy. Some days Maya still looked at him and felt the ghost of what they'd been, and those days were hard. But other days they could laugh together. Share a meal, talk about real things. He'd ask her advice about life, about relationships, about finding meaning beyond work. She'd tell him about new paintings she was working on, and he'd actually listen, actually care. A year after Catherine's death, Alexander started dating someone new, a teacher named Rachel who was kind and genuine and didn't care about his money or status. When he introduced her to Maya, he did it proudly, calling Maya his sister without hesitation or shame. That moment felt like healing. Maya started dating too eventually. A local guy named Daniel who owned a bookstore and made her laugh. She was honest with him from the start about her complicated family situation, and he just shrugged and said everyone's family was complicated in their own way. 2 years after everything fell apart and came back together differently, the three siblings met at the Hartwell estate for what would have been Catherine's birthday. They brought flowers to her grave, told stories about her, laughed and cried together. "Do you think she'd be proud of us?" Olivia asked. "Of how we've all tried to move forward?" "I think so," Maya said. "We're not perfect, but we're trying." That's what she wanted, Alexander nodded. "We're a family. A weird, complicated, damaged family, but a family nonetheless." And that was the truth of it. They were all broken in different ways, all carrying scars from the past, but they'd chosen to show up for each other anyway. To build something new from the pieces of what had shattered. Maya thought about the girl she'd been 3 years ago, desperate for Alexander to love her, willing to hide in the shadows just to be near him. That girl seemed like a stranger now. She'd grown so much, learned so much about herself and what she actually needed. She didn't need someone to complete her. She'd never been incomplete. She'd just been lonely, searching for connection in all the wrong places. Now she had family. Real family who claimed her, who showed up, who chose her again and again. She had a sister who called her just to chat, a father who was learning how to express emotions after a lifetime of holding them back. And she had Alexander, not as a lover but as a brother, which was somehow more permanent and more important. Their story hadn't been a fairy tale. There was no prince, no perfect ending. Just real people trying to navigate an impossible situation with as much grace as they could manage. But standing there at her mother's grave, surrounded by her siblings, Maya realized something important. She'd spent 2 years being Alexander's secret, being hidden and ashamed. Now she stood in full daylight, fully claimed, fully known. She wasn't anyone's secret anymore. She was Maya Chen Hartwell, daughter, sister, artist, survivor. And that was enough. The past had been painful, but it had led her here. To family, to healing, to a version of herself that was stronger than the girl who'd walked away from Alexander's penthouse 3 years ago. "Come on," Olivia said. linking her arm through Maya's. Let's go get lunch. I'm starving and we need to discuss Rachel because I think Alexander is actually falling for her. Really? Maya grinned. Tell me everything. As they walked away from the grave, talking and laughing, the sun broke through the clouds. It felt symbolic somehow, like Catherine was watching over them, pleased that her children had found their way back to each other. The story that had started with secrets and shame had ended with truth and family. It wasn't the ending anyone had expected, but maybe it was the ending they all needed, and Maya, walking between her siblings toward an uncertain but hopeful future, finally felt like she'd found where she belonged.